To our council meeting on this day, the 20th of July. Lovely to have the sun shining out there. If we could all please stand for our opening karakia. Tu taua mai ronga, tu taua mai raro, tu taua mai roto, tu taua mai waho, kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te takatoa, onea, uea, tai ki. Welcome to everybody we have here today. We have no apologies. Do we have any conflicts of interest? There is no public forum today and no announcements from myself. Any announcements from management? No. Any minor matters not on the agenda? Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday the 8th of June 2023. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Happy to move. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ross. Thank you, Councillor Crystal. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Okie dokie. First up on our agenda today, we have the renaming of the Napier War Memorial Centre Ballroom. This is something very dear to my heart. So I'd like to welcome Thunas up just to talk briefly to the paper, please.
Morena, councillors. We just wanted to bring this paper to get approval from council to rename the War Memorial Ballroom to the Natush Ballroom. And this is just to acknowledge Mr. Guy Natush's contribution to the Napier War Memorial Centre. As recommended.
Thank you very much, Thunas. Are there any questions from councillors? No? Okay, I'm going to move this one from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Crystal. And I think that it is incredibly fitting that we are renaming what was the original part of the Napier War Memorial Centre, naming it after the original architect, Mr. Guy Natush, who obviously is a very renowned local architect who worked on many of our beautiful heritage buildings that we have here now. And Guy was also very involved with the restoration and working alongside council to ensure that we had a fitting and respectful restoration of our war memorial elements to the centre. So being able to recognise him now by naming the ballroom after him is very special and very, very fitting, I think. So I'm thrilled to move the motion today. Did you wish to speak to it, Councillor Crystal?
Just to say, you know, that it's very fitting, as you said, to name it after him. He was also a decorated war veteran, so very appropriate in a number of ways. And we're looking forward to the opening day on the 6th of August.
Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
I'm definitely in favour of this, but I wondered if you would allow me to ask a question of the Director about how things are going with the installation of the different elements at the moment, just sort of a bit of an update for people who might be watching this.
We do have Drew here as well, if you want more detail, but we are on time, and so we will be ready for the opening. So I can, and if you've got the opportunity, just peer over the as not everyone can do, but
I was going to say, I'm not tall enough, so
Stand on the wall.
just look through. You'll see it's really progressing well, as the floral clock is also on time.
Awesome, thank you.
Any further speakers to the motion? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Thunas. Next up, we have the Clifton to Tongoio Coastal Hazards Joint Committee, changes to terms of reference, and Heather Bosselman, who will be introducing the paper. Welcome, Heather.
Kia ora. So there's just some minor changes to the current terms of reference, just to align them with the intention of the Joint Committee. Any questions?
Thank you, Heather. And as you say, they are quite minor changes. So if there's no questions or discussion, I'll ask for Councillor Brown.
Just a small part of discussion. It says in the purpose of the terms of reference that the committee is looking at all of coastal erosion, coastal inundation and tsunami. And in a paper later on in the council, we had a conversation around how tsunami didn't actually fit with the line of work that we're doing. So just to be aware that tsunami is not a current work stream that we're working on, and probably that the terms of reference would likely be changed in the future to reflect that that's not really, it's more of a CEDAM response rather than an infrastructure response for a tsunami event. So.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask for a mover. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Gregg. Would you like to speak to that?
Just briefly, I think they all make sense considering the direction of the committee moving into the Hawke's Bay Regional Council's space. I appreciated that update as well because I think that makes a lot of sense. We need to make sure that our committees are focusing in on the right work streams. So yeah, thank you for that and happy to support the changes.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Thank you for the update and happy to support as well.
Any further speakers? So I'll put the motion that we receive the report on the changes to the terms of reference and adopt these changes. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And again, with Heather, we have the Climate Action Joint Committee changes to terms of reference.
A couple of more substantial changes to these terms of reference. It's a much newer joint committee. And I'd just like to acknowledge that I put Tanya Hopkins. It's actually Tanya Hopkins. So that's my mistake. And Councillor Bogue has pointed out to me that there's some errors in the terms of reference around councillors, mayors being called councillors, deputy mayors being called councillors. So I will make sure that the regional council update that. And if it was possible for you to agree to just errors being corrected in the terms of reference, that would be helpful so that we can do that. And then the two changes, the first change is to membership. To provide opportunities for all the PSGs in Hawke's Bay to be members of the Joint Committee. Tanya, on behalf of the PSGs, indicated that this was a really important piece of work that they want to be a part of, and that will provide for approximately equal representation between Māori representatives and councillors. And then the second change is a small change to some of the wording around the purpose, just a change to say that we will align our work with central government policy around our direction of travel in line with central government policy on climate change. Any questions?
No, doesn't look like it. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much, Heather. Oh, no, there is. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Could you just clarify for me, Heather, in the membership section 4.3 each PSGE, do we have a number currently across the region for that? I know it was 9 previously, but I think we've had one more.
My understanding was it was 9, so I don't know if there's more.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? So if we can just make a slight amendment to part B to acknowledge that there are some, so it's really just naming errors, is it, where there's been an incorrect reference?
I think just everybody's been called a councillor. Yeah, so just need to change some of those titles.
Yeah, subject to the correction of titles. Councillor Brown.
And just that if there is 9 PSGEs, there's only 8 listed at the end, unless I'm... Yeah, there's 8 listed.
Okay, I'll make sure that's amended too.
Okay. Correct number of PSGEs. Do I have a mover to receive the report and adopt the terms of reference subject to the changes? Thank you, Councillor Brown, and a seconder, Councillor Bogue. Councillor Brown, would you like to speak to
I think Heather's covered it off really well. It was a really good discussion around the terms of reference and at the committee, and the other councils all seemed in favour of the changes.
Councillor Bogue? No. Any further councillors wish to speak? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks very much, Heather. Moving on to agenda item 4, which is the Napier City Council submission to the Governance and Administration Select Committee on the Water Services Entities Amendment Bill. And I'd invite Lauren up to speak to the paper, please.
Morena koutou. This paper is presenting the submission that was prepared on behalf of Napier City Council intercessionally on the Water Services Entities Amendment Bill. The bill was introduced several weeks ago to the House, and there was an incredibly short window where submissions were accepted. There was 9 working days. So the submission was prepared with your feedback intercessionally and submitted on the 5th of July. The Governance and Administration Committee is due to report back to the House on this bill on the 27th of July, which is next Thursday. From what I can see this morning, there are just under 2,000 submissions on this bill, so no mean feat for the poor committee to get through that. In terms of next steps, second reading will likely happen the week after next, and the reason I predict that is the government have committed to passing this bill, which is the last in a series of 4 before they rise for the general election. So they'll want to be getting all of their business done and dusted by mid-August. Changes from Select Committee can either be debated or incorporated automatically at that second reading, Committee of the whole House, and then third reading, by which time it's passed into law. Were there any specific questions you had about the submission or the bill?
Before I open for questions, Lauren, I did just want to say thank you and acknowledge the work that yourself and others did very rapidly
No problem.
to prepare this submission. As you noted, we did have a very short time frame. And, you know, normally we probably would have had it come here for a formal adoption before we submitted, but the time frame did not allow that. So thank you for all the work you did on it and getting it in on time for us.
Not a problem.
Are there any questions? No questions. I'm happy to move from the chair that we note the contents of this submission. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. And I guess just interesting to hear that there's been around 2,000 submissions. That clearly highlights this is something that is still of much interest to our community and organisations throughout the country. So we'll wait and see what happens through the Select Committee process. But no, for us, I think it was really important for us to take this further opportunity to acknowledge the changes that have been made and it's, you know, the positive move forward, but also to highlight our ongoing concerns as well with the Water Services Entities Amendment Bill. So continuing to advocate on behalf of our community on this matter. Any comments from yourself, Deputy Mayor Brosnan?
No, I support your comments and the submission.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Yep, well done on the work you guys have done. But I guess I have some concerns moving forward with rushed legislation and rushed policy, that it's probably not going to be smooth sailing. So I just highlight that, and I hope we can support you guys the best we can throughout it.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair, probably just reiterating what Councillor McGrath just stated. I think it is concern when government gives us 9 days to respond to a submission, and therefore, obviously, you know, staff does a tremendous amount of work to turn that around pretty quickly, communicating with us via email and seeking our opinions. And I think, just to congratulate the staff, they succinctly put 5 of our concerns, and there are many more in the paper, but succinctly put 5 of our concerns back to the Select Committee to try and overcome some of the great concerns that we've got. And as Councillor McGrath said, rushed policy is poor policy.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. If there's no further speakers, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, agenda item 5, LGNZ remits, and we have Andrew talking to this paper, please.
Good morning. So, with the LGNZ AGM, is it next week?
Next Wednesday.
Yes. There are 11 remits that are being provided to the AGM, and this paper seeks Council's approval to support 2 of those. One relates to roading, and the other relates to auditing, and I am an expert in neither of those things. So if there are any questions, I would suggest I might need to pass those on to people who actually know what they're talking about.
Thanks, Andrew. And I guess just to provide some further clarity, we will be provided with the opportunity as a council to vote on all 11 remits that are at the LGNZ AGM next week. However, these 2 remits in particular, we actually, you may recall, I circulated some emails. We offered to be one of the formal supporting councils to actually get the remit through to the AGM. So this is just doing a bit of a formal adoption of the fact that we have agreed with New Plymouth District Council and Whanganui District Council to support their remits to the AGM. Are there any questions? Councillor Brown.
Just wondered who's going to be able to answer this, if anyone, but just the graphs and the one from New Plymouth, wondering if they've been fact-checked?
So my understanding, having spoken to Mayor Holdham, is all the information that has been collated in those graphs, it was from the Goimers that he put into Waka Kotahi. So I guess, whether he had those peer reviewed, I couldn't comment, but I know that that was where the information came from.
Just some discussion.
Yes, actually.
Thank you. Just from, I support the recommendation by yourself to support these 2 remits. So I just wanted to, those graphs are kind of staggering, I think, when you look at Hawke's Bay, and it's not, I don't think it passes over anyone that this information will have been probably pre-cyclone. I say it goes up to 2023, so I think it's unlikely to be including works and the requirements post-cyclone. So just, I suppose, a comment from me that it is staggering that since 2017 we have, essentially the average weighted least investment across our seal lifespan as a region across the country in Hawke's Bay. And when you layer on top of that everything that's happened in the last 6 months, I think, it would be really remiss not to support a recommendation like this. So, not only were we starting at the bottom, but man, have we had a few shocks. So, thank you for bringing it to us, and to Mayor Holdham for putting that together. I know it's not often easy to get that kind of information in a really presentable way, but well done.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, I suspect, as Deputy Mayor Brosnan said, that this was put together before Cyclone Gabrielle's clean-up, but I understand that Waka Kotahi is well over budget now with the work they've done in our region and the East Coast generally. So I appreciate the motive and the evidence, but I think that this information is now out of date. I'm saying go ahead and, in principle, sure. But the figures, obviously this was put together probably last year before the figures from Cyclone Gabrielle cleanup was taken into consideration when you consider all the bridges and roads and everything in our region, that they've blown the budget, as far as I understand, for roading repairs in our area.
Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think, yes, naturally supporting both of these, and we've all provided comment back to the Mayor on our thoughts. I think this will be a good litmus test for LGNZ. There are 11 remits going forward to the annual meeting. It'll be interesting to see how they perform in delivering on any of those remits.
Very good point, Councillor Simpson. I think history tells us it may not be as good as we would like it to be. Councillor Bogue.
May I speak to the second remit also? Are we looking at both of them?
No, yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, I did speak to the financial manager, Caroline Thompson, yesterday to find out how much the audit actually costs us. Is there a cheaper way of doing it? Are other regions or other LTAs getting their audit done by somebody else? And I did get a good response from Ms Thompson. I was wondering if she could share that with us, because I think it's quite relevant to this, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've just recently received our draft proposed audit fees, which set out the audit fees for the next 3 years, well, including this year, and they have increased significantly. We're just checking them over for the hours and the work that the fees are supposed to include. I do know that anecdotally from other councils that have auditors that aren't audits that aren't taken by Audit New Zealand, that their fees have also increased significantly going forward. It's just another cost that's imposed on the ratepayer. It's another cost that we will need to include in our long-term plan going forward, and also it will be in the order of about 60 to 70,000 that will be unbudgeted for this year that we will have to find. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Caroline. And when we met with our audit lead, she told us that sort of on average across the country for all councils, it's an average of about a 50% increase. So it is very significant. And as you've noted, Caroline, an additional cost on our ratepayers. So if we are in a position to lobby central government to somehow help manage these audit fees, it would certainly be a great outcome. Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair, perhaps just confirm that our hands are actually tied as to how we can service this outcome through the Local Government Act. Is that right? We're tied. We can't go and publicly tender for a better, cheaper service.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. So we have, our auditors are appointed to us by the Office of the Auditor General. So they also, where Audit New Zealand don't have capacity, then the OAG will appoint other external auditors to other councils for their audits.
And further to that, we have very limited ability to negotiate with our auditors to reduce what the fee might look like. They essentially give us what the hours are going to be and we have to agree. That's my understanding. Yep. Is that correct? Yeah,
that's correct. So in the some of the reasoning that they have given for the increase in fees is down to audits becoming more complex. There's more work involved now, particularly around performance measures and 3 waters. More work around for our Hawke's Bay councils on the the cyclone recovery. And yeah, so that all amounts to more hours, more cost.
Councillor Crystal.
So what is the actual cost of the, what are they
proposing? For this financial year that we've just moved into, 296,000. And our budget is in the order of 130,000, I think.
Okay. And further question, so you included 3 waters there, so if the 3 waters bill goes through and 3 waters comes out of council, does audit get cheaper? There's a whole lot of stuff they won't have to audit.
The hours should reduce and therefore the cost.
Not guaranteed.
In theory.
Yeah. Just saying.
Any further questions? Councillor Price?
Yes, I'm back to the sealing of our roads. This graph, if nothing else, highlights the abuse of the central North Island, apart from Southland. All around us has been doing all right, but Hawke's Bay and all the other regions that we bound with have been treated pretty badly. So if nothing else, this will highlight, even if it doesn't get listened to too much, but it will highlight a pretty major issue for Waka Kotahi to have to deal with. It's disgusting.
Councillor McGrath and then Councillor Crown.
Yeah, I'm going to follow on from Councillor Price. And for this, if you start off with a weak foundation and then you have a cyclone on top of that, the effect is going to be more devastating than it perhaps needed to be. So if we'd had a good foundation, perhaps half these potholes and half these things that we're dealing with on a daily basis getting in and out of our city wouldn't be as bad, or the numbers wouldn't be as bad. Like I've spoken with a number of people who have damaged their vehicles, some, 2 or 3 wheels at a time. And it's one thing for the government or Waka Kotahi to walk away and say, well, you should drive to the conditions, but 5 kilometres an hour in the dark doesn't get you anywhere fast. Sorry.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Doubling down on the previous 2 speakers. Staggering, disgusting are certainly appropriate words, I think, when you look at these graphs and look at the lack of investment in our region's roads, and the maintenance thing to vehicles, and I dread to think around accident numbers as well that may have been able to be prevented if there had been better investment. Regarding the audit fees and audit costs, I think it's a really important thing for us to support. Central government are the only ones who have the ability to change the parameters and the guidelines, the system that is followed, that we have to, deliver, and that our staff spend a huge amount of time and effort in working with our auditors to complete, to give our community an appropriate level of transparency around how we are spending their money. So, like I said, I'm really supportive of both these remits today. Thank you.
Councillor Bogan.
Just through you, Madam Chair, a question for our representative on the Regional Transport Committee. Councillor Price, has this issue about the funding for state highways in Hawke's Bay been raised there? And if not, would you be able to take it to that meeting?
Yeah, no problem at all. We're in a wait and see mode at the moment because obviously a lot of these roads are cyclone damaged and we don't know the result of it. We have a workshop coming up next week or the week after, but certainly we'll pass it on. It's a very damaging.
Yeah, I did make mention of this. I attended the last Regional Land Transport Committee and I did make mention in reference to this information at the time to Waka Kotahi. But we will continue to talk to them about it. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I think, the context is significant. We have an export port, so there's large amounts of trucking and train movements or rail movements to the port. We are a tourism destination. There are a large volume of ships and in fact, an increased number of cruise ships coming this year, so there's going to be an even larger number of international guests using buses and other modes of transport to trip around our country. We host the regional airport link, which people need to commute to and from. And quite frankly, if we don't have safe state highways or urban roadways, then it's not a safe place for our residents to commute. And I think that's the message that needs to go back to government, is that what we're talking about is public safety. Not just the repairs and maintenance costs, but it's a bigger cost around public safety. And I think that's the message.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. I thought we'd have some comment from Councillor Mawson.
A bit hard to follow on from everyone else, but I concur with everyone else about the roading. I mean, I encourage those watching to actually get a copy of this and look at this graph that we're talking about here. And it just goes to cement, despite the rhetoric about safety, clearly it was an underinvestment as to why Napatopa Road was 80k an hour.
Any further discussion before I ask for a mover and seconder? Councillor Brown.
I think, I concur with the sentiment that's raised here. I think just thinking about the balance of all of this, I think it would be really interesting to hear from Waka Kotahi around what their response is to this graph. So looking forward to hearing it through the regional transport committee, because this graph is incredibly damning. But it would be really interesting to hear their side of the story, because as we know, as government organisations, there's always two sides. So, yeah.
Councillor Crystal.
I actually spoke to a roading engineer about this, and her liking, and I thought it was very good to share with everyone. She said they have been speaking for years to Waka Kotahi about this. It's like having a house with weatherboards that you don't paint until they get to the rotten boards, and then you have to fix the boards before you repaint it. And that's what they've done. What has happened to our roads in this region? You just need to look at the difference between places like Northland and down here and Hawke's Bay, and do wonder why such a significant difference has happened through the provinces. Because it's not. It's, as you said, it's our area is the worst. And also, following on from Councillor Simpson, the effect to our tourism is quite great, because I know a lot of people who are getting put off driving here because their cars have been destroyed getting here. And I know for a fact, 3 rims on a car on the weekend through hitting a pothole. So it's not good in so many ways.
Councillor McGrath.
Just for Councillor Brown, if she'd like to go and have a look at Waka Kotahi's side of it, perhaps a drive between Hastings and Puckypuck. I think when I went across there last time, there was about 30 potholes. So, and I don't think that area was cyclone damaged. So,
Okay, if there's no further discussion, could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Mawson. Councillor Price.
I think it's all been said. I would comment on Councillor Brown's comment in that I don't think it's new what's happening, and I think Waka Kotahi have had opportunity to have rectified it, and I think the Taupo Road really explains it. The only way they can beat it is by lowering the speed, which is not the answer. I quite like Councillor Crystal's idea about painting. So they're painting over old boards. Thank you.
Councillor Mawson.
All been said, thank you.
Any further speakers? I've got a motion to support these 2 remits. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Caroline. And we have Andrew continuing with our next agenda item, changes to the Hawke's Bay Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee Terms of Reference. That's a bit of a mouthful. Andrew.
To be honest, it was really just to receive the amendments. So I'll just take it as read.
Thanks, Andrew. And the predominant change is that we have appointed mana whenua representatives on the joint committee. Now, under legislation, the current legislation, unfortunately, that does not give them voting rights. However, as a region, we acknowledged it was very important for them to be around the table and part of the discussion. And I think looking to the future, there will be advocacy to the Crown to change the legislation so that these joint committees all around the country, not just here in Hawke's Bay, have mana whenua representation with voting rights. So, are there any questions? Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, that was going to be my query around this paper, just trying to get a sense of the rationale for not having voting rights but being appointed to a joint committee. Do you know if that will be covered in the update to the emergency management? But I think that's what's referenced here, that this is a precursor. You're just not willing to wait for the legislation to change. Have we had a signal that that legislation will include the voting rights?
I'll ask Councillor Simpson, who's attended the last 2 joint committee meetings. So.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, yes, it is proposed in the new legislation that iwi and mana whenua will be recognised through the legislation as members of the joint committees. So that when that is finally enacted, then that will be a formal process. The mayors of Hawke's Bay have decided to get in before then, and particularly in the current circumstances, I think there's a good rationale for that.
Thank you. Councillor Grigg.
Through Madam Mayor, I think it's really important that we do advocate for voting rights for mana whenua. We've had members of the community very upset and disappointed. So I think as soon as we can do that, the better. It'd be brilliant to bring that in.
Any further questions? Councillor Brown.
Discussion, I suppose, around requesting an action to come out of this. Just looking at the Section 8, the purposes of this committee, and it talks about ensuring the hazards and the consequential risks are identified and assessed, and then encouraging communities to understand and manage those risks, I suppose. And I wondered if we might be able to ask the committee to be able to present to us the risks that most affect Napier and what the current controls are and how they're advocating for those hazards to be managed.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Can I suggest that it's not actually the committee that presents to us, but that it is the CEDM group?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Comfortable with that, Caroline? Yeah. Yes, we've got that noted as an action. Thank you. Brilliant. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, just to sort of carry that through, the CEDM group prepare a joint plan for the region which sets out all the hazards. So those hazards are already documented and commented, and the group office delivers on an agreed work program on how to deliver those outcomes. So I think that documentation's already there. It's just, as I say, if it's just an information piece to get the staff along, but as I say, the documentation's already there.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Simpson. And I think, yeah, it would be useful just to have staff to come and talk to that to us and answer any questions that we might have with regards to the work program. If there's no further questions or discussion, could I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Councillor Crown, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Crown, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. Well, you're really supportive of this. I want to acknowledge the leadership of our mayors, of our civic leaders for actually taking this step and, preempting the emergency management bill and making sure that mana whenua iwi are actually at the joint committee table. I think it's, fresh in everyone's memories, the capabilities of the actions that this particular sector of our community were brought to the table in an emergency situation. But the other benefit that I really see to this is that there will be an alignment of understanding as we work together in that joint way of why there was, I suppose, a bit of a discrepancy around how those who were working with group the actions that they could take and the timeframes, etc., and the capabilities and the abilities of mana whenua who weren't perhaps beholden to those same processes and structures. So, I see real positives and see this as being really beneficial for our region.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, this action is not a sudden action. The mayors have been asking for this to take place for some considerable time, as I understand it. So recent events certainly haven't prompted the action, but certainly this change will make life easier going forward.
Thank you. Any further speakers? I'll put the motion that we receive the report and adopt the changes to the terms of reference. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. And Andrew will continue with the next agenda item being the minutes of the Regional Transport Committee from the 5th and 23rd of May.
Actually, sorry, it's the 10th of February and the 5th of May.
10th of February and the 5th of May. I did think that was odd that there was two in May. Just take them as read.
Them as read.
And perhaps I will just ask Councillor Price, was there anything of particular note that you wished to share?
I think it's all pretty self-explanatory in the report. If there's any specific questions, I am happy to help.
Councillor Bowe.
Yes, I have a specific question. On page 59, it talks about appointing a representative of Active Transport in Hawke's Bay, and I wondered if that's been confirmed.
So we're just in the process. It'll be Active Transport Napier. Hastings has one, and it appears that's the best option, having the two of them, and then there'll be a line through to the Transport Committee.
So
But the
will,
paper's just being put together at the moment.
will they be, it says a representative of active transport in the Hawke's Bay region. Will they be representing their particular cities, or will there be somebody for the
Representing their
region?
specific city, working together with Hastings, like.
So there will be somebody on that committee or attached to that committee?
We're going to have our own committee, Active Transport Committee, that's the proposal. Okay. What
So I'm
else?
just reading the minutes. It said a representative in the Hawke's Bay region would be confirmed.
On the Regional Land Transport Committee.
Yeah.
No, they were, each, and Councillor Taylor may be able to help us a bit because he's been doing a lot of work on it, but each city will report through their delegate on the committee on the land transport. Is that correct, Councillor Taylor?
Well, I actually had some questions in relation to the minutes to try and get a better feel of what is actually happening, because in point 11, or 11 in the minutes, and the third bullet point, it says the Hawke's Bay Regional Council has offered assistance to help establish the Regional Active Transport Committee. I'm not quite sure what that assistance is, who it's been offered to, and once formed, will have advisory representation at the Regional Transport Committee. So the minutes indicate one process, and the local authorities are actually going through a separate process. So I'm a little bit confused as to what path we're moving down. Hastings, as Councillor Price has said, has got and has had an active transport committee for some time, and we have a working group here who have started to work on an active transport committee, and Councillor Gregg and myself have been working on that. So it just seems to me that there's no real coordinated way in that this is happening. For some time, the old governance, cycle governance group, had a representation at the Regional Transport Committee without voting rights. Now, whether that's getting confused into the same thing, because I look at the minutes and there should supposedly be someone at that table, but I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. We're working within our organisation to promote active transport, but the pathway to the Regional Transport Committee is still a little bit undefined, I would think.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Can I suggest that we have an action to follow up with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council regarding clarification of the establishment of a Regional Active Transport Committee and how that would then work with our individual TLA active committees, and also to just get some clarity around that membership from a Regional Active Transport Committee on the Regional Transport Committee.
Totally
I've probably used far more words than I
No,
needed
no,
then, Carolyn.
Just to concur, Madam Mayor, I was wondering if I could ask Andrew, would that require a change to the terms of reference if there's going to be a member delegated that role on the Regional Transport Committee?
So I'd have to have a look and see what the terms of reference already provide. I'm not familiar with them.
So, just to clarify a little bit, the Regional Transport Committee, and I stand corrected, but there was no appetite to have a regional active transport member with voting rights on it. So we've done an investigation, and Robin Malley's doing it, where we have a Napier Active Transport Committee. Hastings has there, and their path is through the delegate, like Napier's sort of thing. That's the way I see it at this stage. I guess it can be discussed further if we want to have a regional active transport committee, but we don't want to get too many leaders.
Thank you, Councillor Price, but just acknowledging that the minutes before us do say the offer has been made, so we just need to seek some clarity around what decisions have been made with regards to that. Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Just further to that conversation is that in the resolutions at the start, 3.15, a representative of active transport in the Hawke's Bay region to be confirmed on that committee. So again, it just needs some clarification.
Clarity. Yeah, thank you. Any further questions? Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Price and Councillor Bogue. Any further comments to be made?
No, I think it's all been said and there's a little bit of follow-up.
Great, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Oh, and actually, we've got you for just about the rest of the meeting, Andrew, haven't we? So next up, we have the minutes of the Hawke's Bay Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee from the 28th of April. I will just invite actually Councillor Simpson, who attended that meeting. Is there anything that you would like to bring to the table's attention, Councillor Simpson?
Probably the most significant outcome, Mayor Wise and I discussed before the meeting, was the terms of reference for a review of the recent emergency event. And we made some very clear advocacy around what we expected from that review. And you can see in the minutes on the Cyclone Gabrielle review, there are some change points for the terms of reference around ensuring that the review party actually determines what were reasonable expectations of a disaster or of preparedness for a disaster. So those are the key things that we have fought for in achieving that review. Other than that, more or less, it's business as usual. Obviously, the group office have expressed some concerns over staff retention. The staff have been under considerable pressure over the last 2 years, having maintained a COVID operation, and then obviously the Cyclone Gabrielle operation has taken quite a toll on the staff, and they're experiencing turnover. At the more subsequent committee meeting, the committee approved that additional capacity would be made available to the group office to try and encourage some greater outcomes. And of course, the other thing we recognise is that our own council is currently in a recruitment process to recruit our own in-house staff to assist us with our corporate and community preparedness for emergencies and disasters.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Any questions? Could I have a mover and thank you, Councillor Simpson. I'm happy to second. No further comments from me. Any comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Next up, the minutes of the Oamaranui Refuse Landfill Joint Committee meeting held on the 2nd of December. So again, Councillor McGrath, you're a representative on that committee, aren't you?
Yep.
Would you like to provide any comments or feedback?
No, bear in mind these are the December minutes, so it was more about forming the committee and getting things started again. I guess a more recent update would be that the landfill was hit really hard by the cyclone, underwater, and they had to be helicoptered in to start the process of getting it back together, and they had the place back open very quickly and did an absolute awesome job. So, yeah. And I guess for landfills, just be aware for the future that when you have a cyclone and you start dumping stuff fast, it fills up quickly, and new landfills are very expensive to build with all the consents and bits and pieces you have to do. So just a bit of, put that in your mind for the future.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Any questions? Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor McGrath and Councillor Taraha. Any further comments?
Just, following on from Councillor McGrath's kōrero, we've had another two hui since then, and I was elected deputy chair, and they've had to raise their floor levels due to the floods, and it actually took a couple of months off their current site, so they'll have to move to a new site earlier than expected.
Thank you, Councillor Taraha. If there's no further speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And our final paper of minutes, in particular, being the minutes of the Napier Hastings Future Development Strategy Joint Committee from the 27th of April. I have asked Rachel to come and speak briefly on this, as this is a brand new committee. This was the first meeting of that committee, of which myself and Councillor Crystal are representatives, with Councillor Bogue as our representative. So I thought it would be good to have Rachel sort of just speak to what the actual purpose of the committee and the strategy itself is. And we will be having another paper coming to us at our extraordinary council meeting on the 31st of July with an issues paper that we will need to provide some feedback and guidance on. So, yeah, Rachel, I'll pass across to you.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. So the Future Development Strategy, or FDS as we sort of name it, many of you have probably heard about it before, so I'll just go over sort of what it's for. It is a growth strategy for our urban areas within our region, and so it has a regional focus. It replaces the HPUDs, some of you might recall what that strategy is, and it's a legal requirement under the National Policy Statement for Urban Development. So it was a requirement that all councils must have a future development strategy. Because it's regional, it is ourselves in partnership with Regional Council and Hastings and our PSGEs. And the study area, because it's an urban environment that we are looking to understand our future growth options, the study area is a 15-minute drive from the Napier and Hastings centres. To give you the context of the area of land that we are focusing in on. The Future Development Strategy considers quite a number of things actually, and they are quite complex matters, but things like traffic modelling and population growth, the expected demand on our services, and how housing capacity assessment work. It considers things like our natural hazards, and that will include the latest tsunami risk modelling. Our sites of significance to Māori, our landscapes, our significant natural areas, all of those things, our infrastructure constraints, and the cyclone flooding maps will also be inputted into that. As much data as we can have out of the cyclone, the FDS will take into account. And then, of course, the last thing it will take into account is the National Policy Statement on Highly Productive Land. Yeah. So, in terms of housing capacity and assessments, there's quite a bit of modelling work that has been done based on statistical analysis, and there is estimated to be a need for 16,000 or just over 16,000 homes, additional homes in the Hawke's Bay region for the coming 30 years. The FDS is for a 30-year period. And 80% of those would need to be met in the urban area. So that's 13,056 dwellings for the region, and we're sort of looking around 6,700 for Napier. So that's sort of helping us to understand what sort of housing capacity and growth options that we have. And as you can appreciate, it is a regional focus, so not Napier alone. Some of the issues, and many of you will know these already, that the FDS will need to try and resolve are things like that we have significant infrastructure constraints that we need, and we need to accommodate that long-term growth. Many of our areas are affected by natural hazards, and can we mitigate those risks, or do we need to prioritise growth elsewhere? Things like how can greenfield growth be provided while maintaining the rural productivity? Things like how can the FDS push intensification into our existing main centres to capture that urban growth? How can the FDS support iwi and hapu aspirations for urban development? So there are some of the kind of matters that the committee will be grappling with, and the issues and options paper that Mayor Wise referenced, which will be coming to you on the end of this month, on the 31st, canvasses a number of those issues. That'll come to you for endorsement before it goes out for public consultation. So some of the next steps for us is we have, the committee has agreed and signed off on its vision, principles and objectives, and they're all in the report for you. There's been updated projections of demand for the dwellings completed, as I mentioned, that capacity assessment work, and we've also put out a call for opportunities to land developers or landowners and developers, and a number of responses have been received. And then, of course, the issues and options paper that will be coming to you at the end of the month. So I'm not the technical lead, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions within my knowledge. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. That's really useful information for the councillors. So I will open up for any questions. Councillor McGrath.
It's through the chair. You talked about the 15-minute cities before. Is that something that's government driven, or is it just a planning idea? Where's it coming from with regards to this?
I understand it's sort of what you would consider for the type of regional urban city that we have. 15-minute would be a standard that you'd take as a drive out. The committee considered some other options, but that was determined to be the best way to try and scope that. It's not to say it's a hard line, though.
Any further questions? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Just wondering, what's the output of the committee? That the strategy, would I be correct in thinking it's a bit of a master plan?
It's a strategy for your urban growth, which will then feed into every council's LTPs, and it will also, as you know, there's housing strategy work that we're doing, infrastructure strategy, all of those sort of key pieces that the council needs to develop would be informed by this future development strategy. And then with the spatial planning bill that's as part of the RMA reform, there's a requirement on a regional spatial picture or strategy, and so this is your urban spatial strategy, and then the regional spatial strategy would take into account all of the other areas that are non-urban as well.
Thank you. Councillor Barg.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I probably should know this, but does this include the whole of Napier? It obviously doesn't include the whole of Hastings, but does this plan, because we're so compact, does it include the whole of Napier?
I'll have to look at the maps, but I'm pretty sure it's all of pretty much all of Napier that can drive within 15 minutes. I guess it depends on how fast you drive, but
On the roads with the potholes. Okay, if there's no further questions or discussion, I'm happy to move these minutes. Councillor Crystal will second them, and I guess just wanting to acknowledge that this is an incredibly important strategy for us as a city and as not a whole of region, but us and Hastings, to really identify the best places for our future growth and development, not just for residential but for industry. It does cover industry as well, so we'll certainly be ensuring that the whole of council is kept involved and updated as we progress through the strategy and the adoption of the Councillor Crystal, did you have anything to add?
No, just following on, it's also extremely important in protecting our fertile soils that we have left, and that I think we need to change the way we think a little bit and where we want to build and how we want to live a little bit. We don't all have to have a quarter acre section anymore, so it's actually a really significant part of us, and for Hawke's Bay, that's our fertile soils are a huge part of our economy.
Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Rachel. Item 11 is the action points register as at the 27th of June, which I'd just like to say thank you to Andrew for pulling this together. This is a new report that will be coming to us each council meeting so that we can track the actions that have been recorded through our various committees. You will note that this particular report has a number of actions on it, and I'd say thank you for all the staff that have been involved in all the completed actions. There are a number which of course will then drop off and not continue forward, but I've probably said what you were going to say, Andrew, have I? I'll pass it across to you.
Yes, so this one is probably the biggest one that will come through, and then in future they will be a bit smaller because all the completed ones will have dropped off. Some staff were keen for me that as soon as they got them completed, they said, oh, you can take it off the register completely now. I said, well, no, it still has to go to council to see that it has been completed. It's not just telling me that it's been completed. So, yes, I guess the only other points to note, so this is for council and committee meetings. And also, in terms of what goes onto the register, I just go through the minutes and look, and it's a bit of a judgment call as to what things have gone on and what haven't. Some things, are so big and so obvious that I didn't really think needed to be here. So don't look at it and think, oh, but you haven't said you're going to do a district plan because, obviously we're going to have a district plan. So, so things like that aren't on there, but it's things that otherwise could quite easily slip by the wayside and somebody might forget about, or it just gets put on the too hard basket. Yes, so, and it's split between the public and public excluded meetings, so each meeting will be one of each. Otherwise, hopefully it's reasonably self-explanatory, and happy to take any questions, although if it's about a specific item, I'll probably be looking over to my left for advice as to what progress has been made.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, just about the sunshade that's spoken of on page 5 or 134. It says that the officers would report back on additional shade being installed as part of the Ocean Spa upgrade program. And this is considered completed because a report was presented to the Sustainable Napier Committee meeting. Well, that oral report said a shade study will be carried out at Ocean Spa in line with the council shade policy, so the needs will be addressed. So I just keen that because we've got a hot summer ahead, I just don't want this commitment to be slipped away, and not that I'd really like it to be reported back to us again once that step has been taken, please.
I can I'll undo the completed status, if that would work.
If you don't mind, thank you.
Unless any other advice behind you, no? And so it'll be still active.
Thank you. Oh, if you could, yeah, that would be great. Thank you, Russell.
Sorry, yes, I believe the sale in question was part of the project, the original development, but the additional sales were going to be part of a further study. So that was the reason why we closed out this action, was that we believe the initial action on the project had been completed, but yes, we did agree that there were further needs assessments to be done. So we were going to get the activity manager to come along, I think, to the next Sustainable Napier Committee.
Yeah. Thanks, Russell. Any further questions? Mover. Thank you, Councillor Crown. Councillor Gregg, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, please, just quickly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the staff. It is a very simple thing, but it makes a massive difference, not just to us, but I think to our staff and our team as well, where we're actually able to publicly sort of acknowledge the additional work that we ask of them and that they are delivering for our community, and applaud the common sense approach that you've taken at putting this together, Andrew. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, through Madam Mayor. Thank you, Andrew and the team. It's amazing. It's so logical, so clear, so effective. Brilliant, brilliant work. Thank you.
Any further speakers? No. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. And moving on to item 12, the Chief Executive's report. I would just invite the Chief Executive if there's any comments or you would prefer to take it as read.
Yeah, happy to take it as read and obviously take any questions. I guess probably the only comment I'd make is this is a slightly new look. As I'd mentioned to you, I know what you'd had in the past. So happy to take feedback or comments on this. My view was that the report you'd had in the past was very externally focused and a lot of that information you could get elsewhere. So this was really about trying to just demonstrate to you what we are doing internally and how we're progressing. And these are some of the key things that I thought you might be interested in knowing.
Councillor Bogue.
Yes, thank you very much for this. I'm just a bit concerned that Te Pihinga, the community centre, from what I know, has been given a sort of a wait and see kind of orange light, that it will be all put on the table again for our LTP. I know the community is very excited about it. The land has been bought and I'm really, hoping that it might be on hold at the moment, but that we will progress it. So just giving you some feedback from the community, it's a very important aspect of that community and that they're very excited about it. So
I acknowledge that feedback, and the key thing for us is the honesty of the traffic lights. So not saying something's green when it's actually amber. So, but I do acknowledge that feedback, and we have got a process, and we will be back.
Councillor Crystal.
I've just got a question about the Napier Eyesight rebranding and refurbishment. And it says on it, next immediate milestone tender process for build to commence. And I didn't think we had got that far with the eyesight project. I thought it was kind of on hold while we were doing all the review. So I just wondered what was happening there.
So I don't have the details. I'll look to my right if anyone can help. Funas?
Thank you, councillors. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we are in the process of going out to the market. So with the project, and it's a refresh. It's not a rebuild. So can I just maybe your question? I couldn't completely hear your question.
Well, I may be wrong, but my recollection was then we were looking at different sites for the eyesight, and that was coming back to us before we kind of spent any money on it. Am I wrong?
My recollection is that yes, any major, we wouldn't be progressing any major expenditure. However, there is the national rebrand for all eyesights underway. So I think, Funas, what I'm hearing you say is that this project is with regards to ensuring that we're honouring the commitment to that rebrand.
Yes.
And I guess as a part of that, there is a bit of a refresh within the building at the
Yes,
same
because we are getting 50% of the cost from New Zealand eyesights, so or Tourism New Zealand, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Funas. Any further questions? Can I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Tariha. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Louise. It's a really concise report. I think it's a really good opportunity for people to get a feel of what's happening across the organisation, lots of different areas. There'll be things of interest in here to almost everyone if they were to have a read through it, right from those affected through the cyclone and see at what stage we're at with those negotiations, up into key projects of interest, as well as some big regulatory matters and how they're affecting us. So thank you for pulling it all together. I found it really useful.
Councillor Taraha.
Tau toko those kōrero. I look forward to the next ones.
Any further speakers? I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So moving through to our reports from our standing committees, first up from the Audit and Risk Committee held on 23rd of June. I will just read through, actually, do I not have that on my little list?
Under the reports and the specialists.
Oh, yes. I'll read through the agenda items. If there is anything that you would like to pause and ask any questions on, please let me know, and then we will adopt them as a whole group. So the first report was the Health and Safety Report, Risk Management Report, Sensitive Expenditure for the Mayor and Chief Executive, Internal Audit Status Update, and the External Audit Status Update. If there's no questions or discussion, if I could have a mover, thank you, Councillor Mawson. Seconded. Councillor Brown, thank you. Did you wish to comment on anything with regards to the committee?
No, some good meaty discussions as always.
Always thorough.
Excellent, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And moving to the reports from Ngā Manukanuka Iti Iwi held on the 30th of June. And we had a report on Matariki 2023 and the nomination of an appointed member to the Sustainable Napier and Future Napier committees, and a Three Waters project brief. And just to provide a comment that we are still waiting for a nominee to the Sustainable Napier and Future Napier committees, which we hope to have that before our next committee meeting. I think Councillor Price is following up on that one. So, and I guess also just to make a comment and say thank you and acknowledge everybody that was involved in our Matariki celebrations over the last couple of weeks. Morohiti Tomo and his team who have been involved in that, a number of our comms team. I think we'll all agree there were some incredible events. It was really special, and I think quite timely for our community to be able to participate in those, so acknowledging those. Any questions or discussion? I'm happy to move from the chair if I could have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Price. Any further comments from yourself, Councillor Price? No? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried. And this brings us to our final agenda item in the open meeting, being the reports under delegated authority and tenders let. We do have 4 tenders let. Were there any questions from councillors on any of those? No, being none, mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan and Councillor Price. Do either of you wish to comment? Okay. If there's no further speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And we now will have the recommendation to exclude the public. I would just note that we do have some people that we need to allow to remain in the room for these reports, being Jeremy Smith from the Heritage Manager of the Art Deco Trust for the funding for the refurbishment of the Memorial Square community rooms. We will also have Dr. Richard Grant, Chair of the Hawke's Bay Museum Trust, joining us for the paper on the museum research and archive funding. And lastly, we'll have Mike Wakefield from Simpson Greeson joining us online for the Prudence and Drive Judicial Review paper. So could I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Taraha, seconded by Councillor Mawson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. We will take a brief break.